Happy Monday, suckers! How you doing? This is Josh.
Dalton.
And we're not here right now.
We're out of office.
You'll have to see that. Yeah, we are out of office. Your boy Josh is celebrating his 30th birthday. So taking the week off.
Well deserved. First week in a long time, man.
Yeah, honestly, since January, we'll take it. Super excited, but we are going to leave you not empty-handed because we love you so much. We did an episode literally a year ago now.
A year ago.
Literally
Almost
a year ago.
exactly.
Yeah, and we did this episode literally probably about 3 weeks before we had our first pop as a show and people started discovering us.
Yeah.
And it was an interview we did with Elizabeth Smith-mccrossin,
Yep.
MLA for Cumberland County.
Yep.
And if you kind of recognize the name, like, it kind of sounds familiar. Where's that from? Oh, she's the woman that everyone, claimed, started the whole protest thing.
Yeah, think border shutdown.
Yeah. Yeah, that whole thing. That one. Right in the minutes of COVID and all that. We interviewed her. We had that interview right after that all happened.
Yeah.
Because no one was actually talking her side of that story.
Yeah.
What was happening. And I'm not gonna lie, me and Dalton went into that interview thinking a certain way about her, and we left thinking very differently.
Absolutely.
And we want to leave this episode with you. We think it'll be a good one. We kind of hear her perspective of what happened with the border shutdown, why the highway got shut down, what people were frustrated about, why Ian Rankin wasn't talking to her at the time, why she got ousted out of her own party at the time by Tim Hewson.
Yeah.
It was a wild one.
It was interesting to hear from the person herself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And hearing also the tricks the media was pulling to make sure she looked a
yeah.
specific way as well.
Yeah, there was a specific part in that interview about what would get posted, what not, and it's an interesting insight into how that world works.
Exactly. And it's also an interesting insight for yourself to see two rookie interviewers go ahead.
It's not like today.
Yeah, it was definitely it was tough at times.
Yeah.
But we will stop talking and we will let the show go on, and we all love you so very much, and we will see you next week.
Innovation is in our veins. Soon the whole world will know our names. Sharing our knowledge and freedom reign. We here for the people, you know it's our way. Setting foundations is part of the dream. It doesn't matter if you're new to the game. Listen up now, cause we all gon' say, elevate, 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 higher, elevate, 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 higher. We gon' rise up, we all gon' shine. Work through adversity, stay on the grind. Elevate, elevate, this is our time. Elevate, elevate.
Welcome to the Elevate Podcast, everyone. We have a good one here planned for y'all. The one that y'all have been waiting for. We're excited to bring it to you. It's me. It's your boy Josh.
Dalton. We're back together.
We are back together, touching each other.
Oh, yeah.
And we have an amazing guest on with us. We have Elizabeth Smith-mccrossin. Many love her. Many, maybe not so much at this point, but we are excited to have her on. We really, we saw what happened, a couple of weeks ago with the blockades, and we really wanted to bring her on to tell her side of the story and what she's seen and what she's experienced. We're going to get into all of the juicy stuff, don't you worry. But first, we want to kind of get into more, so who is Elizabeth is all about and how she got into politics, and we're going to get into all that soon and very quickly. But before we do that, please subscribe.
Share it on your socials. Share with your friends.
Do all the things, please. It means so much to us, and it means the world, because through it, we can bring on amazing guests and get the answers and insights that you want. So first, Elizabeth, give a kind of 2-minute rundown of who you are, what you're about.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me today. It's great to be here with you. Who am I? I'm a mom. I'm a wife. I'm a registered nurse. I'm a farmer's daughter. I grew up in Cumberland County on a dairy farm. My mom passed away when I was only 5 years old. She had melanoma. She was only 28 years old. So I was the youngest of 3 children. And that kind of helped to form just who I am, really, to be honest. I grew up always wanting to be a nurse and be one of those nurses that took care of my mom, because I don't really have any memories of her other than sort of the nurses dressed in white. So I did that. I studied nursing at Dalhousie and then went on and opened 3 businesses, all health related. And I guess I'm in this job that I am today because I just keep seeing where things can be done better. I keep wanting things to be done better. And my husband and I went to the States for a couple of years back from 95 to 97. And I wouldn't want necessarily to have a privatized system because I saw people there that needed healthcare and couldn't access it because they didn't have the money. But I also see where we could be much more efficient here in Canada and here in Nova Scotia. We can do a much better job with what we have. So that's what sort of drove me to ask people to check an X by my name on the ballot and see if I could help change some legislation and policy to make a difference, specifically in the areas of healthcare. But I'm also very passionate about our economy and just people. I love people, and I want people to be able to live their best life. I'd love to, my goal would be that every person can be the best person that they can be. And government has a role to make sure that there's proper infrastructure and services in place to support people. So that's it in a nutshell.
Perfect. And we love that. We love that you kind of hit on almost everything. And so what was it like for you kind of early on, why did you feel the need to go to the States to, essentially, why'd you go to the States? That's
a great question. It was healthcare. My husband's a family physician and I'm a registered nurse. We spent a year in Toronto where he finished his residency, and then his first practice was in Liverpool, Nova Scotia, beautiful town on the South Shore of Nova Scotia. And John Savage was the premier of Nova Scotia at the time, and he cut the physicians' wages by around 14%. And both my husband and I we just had hundreds of $1,000s of debt. We were drowning in debt, and we really were overwhelmed. And every day we were getting calls from recruiters from the States trying to entice us to go. And eventually one of those days I picked up the phone and talked to someone from Wisconsin, and then started talking to other ones. We ended up going to probably 3 or 4 different places between Minnesota and Wisconsin, and just made a decision to go. We went specifically with a goal to pay off our student loan debt. And we thought we could do it in 5 years. And then our plan was to return to Nova Scotia to raise our family. And we lived very frugally, and we paid it off in 21 months.
Wow.
Now, part of it was because of the currency. The Canadian currency was really poor at the time. So every dollar we sent back on our debt was like $1.45. So that really helped. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But, and then we came right back. As soon as our debt was paid, we came back.
Wow. I think that's amazing. And that's a cool adventure. Obviously, I know that y'all are avid Green Bay Packers fans, and that makes a lot of sense why that's the case. How much cheese no, I'm not going to go down that path. So, when you came back, obviously you talked about businesses that are health related. What kind were those businesses, and why specifically in the health space?
So when we came back, Nova Scotia still had a real shortage of family doctors, and from sort of in Nova Scotia we refer to it as the Savage days. So we came back and we had 2 more children. So now we have 4 children, and my husband was working in an environment where he didn't have enough colleagues, and through helping him over the years and learning a lot in the States, my first business was called East Coast Holistic Health, and it was a business that offered turnkey physician management services. And so I really started it more as a social enterprise, to be honest, as a way to try to attract new physicians to our community. And so within 6 months, I had 5. And then within 4 years, we brought in another 11. So it worked. So I started that in 1999. And then if you are entrepreneurial, or if others, entrepreneurs get bored. So they start things, they have ideas, and then they plant the seed and watch it grow. And then they want to plant another seed and watch it grow. So that's kind of what I did. My physician services business was I think at my peak, I had like 12 clients, 12 physicians that came here to Amherst. And then I started Amherst Medical Aesthetics, which was, I bought laser equipment and offered skincare services, and my nursing, my philosophy is more of a holistic approach. So I love when you can offer a whole suite, I guess, of services to people. So we had a naturopathic physician, massage therapy. We had registered nurses doing a lot of education in well women clinics. What else did I have? Nutrition. We had a nutrition counselor. We had therapists doing counseling. So yeah. So right beside my health clinic, I had this Amherst Medical Aesthetics, and I started that in 2006. And then in 2009, again, I got a little bored, so I sold everything to the docs for the health clinic, and then I took Amherst Medical Aesthetics and I moved it physically to a new location downtown and opened Damaris Spa and Wellness Center. And it was basically all of the holistic services, including a well woman clinic, which I ran out of. So you could go to this spa and you could have a pap smear or a pedicure. It was awesome.
Interesting.
Whoa.
I know.
Wow.
I thought you guys would really appreciate that.
No, I do. We really did appreciate that. Mac, did you appreciate that? Okay, we love that. Awesome. So I think what I find interesting, so obviously, you've had quite the adventurous life at this point. You've tried a lot of different things. No one can accuse you of not trying things. So you did the business, and what did you have that moment? 'Cause I know how I feel as someone who runs his own business. We're running a podcast together. I love business. I love marketing. I love design. I love all of that stuff. But I between you and me, Elizabeth, I hate government. And did you find that was kind of the tension you felt, is that you realized that if businesses can be run efficiently, why can't government be run efficiently? Did you run into that at all?
Absolutely. I ran into that in all kinds of different facets. So I went on and open 2 more businesses. I bought a building, and just as an example, I had a building that I put a local food store in, Manasseh Local Food. You probably remember that. Mm-hmm. And I remember getting a visit from the fire inspector because the Rotary Club wanted to host the Christmas party there. So in order to get a liquor license, you had to have this fire inspector come. Now, keep in mind, the building passed all fire codes when it was constructed. And he came in and he found 11 violations. Like, I don't even know what they were. They were nothing. But the 11th one was significant. And it was, he thought, keep in mind, my building was 80 years old. He thought that I needed to put fireproof gyprock in the basement of my building. So this is an 80-year-old building that has a sump pump that's wet all the time. The floors are about 6 inches thick because when they built buildings back then, that's what they were. And all to get a $50 liquor license for this Rotary Club Christmas party. And it would have cost me $25,000.
Wow.
Anyway,
wow.
Needless to say, I said, I don't need a liquor license. Thank you very much. I'm not doing it. Mm. And he went on a month later to send me a letter to say that he actually changed the code of my building to a hazardous something building so that then I had to do what he said. It was all about ego and power, is my point. It had nothing to do with common sense or what was realistic. So I appealed it and I won, but it was really stressful and it was needless. It was needless as a business owner. Like, as a business owner, you're trying to make a profit so you can pay your employees and you can survive and keep going. And in order to do that, you have to grow your revenue and you have to keep your expenses under control.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think most of my frustration was more from the healthcare benefit because I really have a hard time seeing people suffer needlessly. And again, going back to, growing up and losing my mom at such a young age, I really feel like when people are sick and they need healthcare, they should be able to access it timely. And when something doesn't have to be done poorly, when it can be done better, you want to see it done better. So that's really probably what drove me to put my name on the ballot, because I really believe completely that we could have a world-class healthcare system here in Nova Scotia, completely.
Totally. Oh, and I think I really appreciate those answers and kind of your perspective and viewpoint of why you did and went to office. So I kind of want, as we shift gears a little bit to the amazing day that was, I think it was June 23rd on Wednesday, all the fun that came with that. And I remember, I'll kind of give a brief rundown of what happened, at least from what we saw, and then we'll kind of share what we went through, and then we'll open it up and let's have a fun conversation about it. But so for those who are listening, to those who don't know what happened, so essentially what happened is there was an announcement made. There's an expectation of an announcement to be made that the border was going to open between New Brunswick and Nova Scotia. And then the premier, Ian Rankin, got up there and actually said, psych, we're actually going to hold off on opening up the border for now, and we're going to keep opening up things within the province still and keep people out. And there were mainly the border communities weren't very happy about this because they were anticipating the border to be open, and it wasn't. And they were not happy, and they felt like they kind of were slighted over the course of the pandemic, and they felt like they weren't being led truthfully. And so they were expecting to just see their families just on the other side of the border, weren't able to do that. And so there's like, enough's enough. And, a protest that started to block the highway. It was, that was kind of essentially what happened. Obviously everyone has their own take and perspective of what happened that day. And the media will say one thing, and I know for myself, when I saw the blockades and all the stuff that was going on, we had a podcast that night, and we covered it. It was from our perspective, we know it was a very serious situation to those who directly involved. For myself, I was like, that's my homie Elizabeth, and doing her thing out there. And so, from your perspective, Elizabeth, what happened that day, and why did you feel a need to kind of start a protest in this regard and make something happen?
So I don't know how much time you have. Can I go back in time?
Please take all the time you need.
So let me just give a little bit of backstory. So you're right. We are here in a border community here in Cumberland. We border New Brunswick, Westmoreland County. And anyone that's listening that lives in Halifax, I want you to imagine that the border is between Halifax and Dartmouth. Okay. Let's say the harbor is the border. And I want you to imagine that while in Cape Breton and in Yarmouth, there's COVID and there's outbreaks, but in Halifax, Dartmouth, where you are, there's no COVID. And now I want you to transplant that and put that up here in Cumberland and Westmoreland County, New Brunswick. So that was the scenario essentially for almost the entire pandemic. Cumberland had 0 cases of COVID until March. So a whole year we went with no COVID, and very, very few cases in Westmoreland County, which is our neighbor. So similar to Halifax, Dartmouth, we share healthcare services. So people in southern New Brunswick would come to Amherst for surgery, ENT, obstetrics, so deliver babies. And then people in Amherst go to Moncton for chemotherapy treatments, orthopedics, and urology. So we're completely integrated our healthcare system. In fact, my family doctor is 5 minutes across the border in Sackville. So healthcare is significant. During the pandemic, anyone from Nova Scotia all their healthcare services were canceled in New Brunswick. And many of the people in New Brunswick were denied ability to come to Amherst as well. So there was a lot of frustration. So I'll just give you an example. I'd have a woman call me one day and say, Elizabeth, I've been newly diagnosed with cancer. My family doctor sent me to Moncton. I was supposed to have an appointment next week, but now I can't go. So now I have to wait 8 weeks to see an oncologist in Halifax. And instead of traveling 40 minutes every day to get my chemo and radiation, I have to go and actually live in Halifax because it's a 4-hour trip and I can't go back and forth every day. So now I have to live down there, find a place to stay, and financially. So these are the kinds of scenarios that I'm dealing with every single day. Keeping in mind, there's no COVID in our community, in our entire county, and very little neighboring county, okay? Mm-hmm. I would have a mother, 60-year-old mother, whose 40-year-old daughter died from cancer. Funeral's 40 minutes away. She wasn't allowed to go to her own daughter's funeral, and there was no COVID in our communities. I had a woman, she had been married 72 years. 72 years, imagine that.
Yeah.
And wasn't allowed to go to her own husband's funeral because she had lived in a nursing home. So these are the kinds of, there's a lot of scenarios. So I would say healthcare, and then life-threatening family situations were created a lot of stress in the lives of the people here for 15 months. So it was like I'm going to compare it to like kind of like a pressure cooker. And then layered on top of that was our business community. So when you enter Nova Scotia, there's 3 land entrances. There's the Trans-Canada Highway, there's a dirt road called Mount Watley, and then there's the Tidnish entrance, which a lot of people take when they go to PEI. Almost the entire pandemic, only one entrance had, we call them our border guards. And so the other 2 entrances are wide open. The government knew that, but it was a lot of it, the local people felt the border people were there for optics, so that people in the rest of the province felt protected, even though for almost the entire pandemic, no one was denied entry into this province of Nova Scotia. A lot of people didn't realize that. So there were conservation officers at the border, and they were incredible, very professional, but they were essentially Walmart greeters. They welcomed people in. If somebody was from not a local person, they said, make sure you self-isolate. No data was collected and no follow-up was done. Now, that went on almost the entire pandemic. I would have RCMP officers calling me saying, Elizabeth, there's people entering Nova Scotia with full-on COVID symptoms. There's people during when Ontario and Quebec were having outbreaks, we'd get 60, 70 cars a day from Ontario or Quebec. And our border people had no ability, no power to stop them. So that was going on. And then when you come in on Trans-Canada Highway, exit 1, you take that and it goes down LaPlante Street into our downtown Amherst. That exit to this day is still closed. Yep. So our entire business community has been, we know every business has been impacted by COVID, but our businesses are impacted exponentially, because even when there's no restrictions, we still couldn't have people enter through exit 1 into our town. And it's still closed to this day. So, and then I guess the last point I'll make kind of as a lead up to what happened is similar to Halifax, Dartmouth, if you go back to that analogy, between 40 and 60% of the customer base for our businesses here in the border community are from Southern New Brunswick. So the entire time that the borders have been closed, our businesses here lost more than 50% of their customer base. So when the rest of the province was open, and we were technically open, our businesses still couldn't access 50% of their customer base. And a lot of people were very, very frustrated by that. And so now let's go to what happened on June 22nd. Okay, so I guess one other point I'll make is I became very good friends with Megan Mitten. She's the Green Party MLA from Sackville, Westmoreland, New Brunswick. Amazing woman. We talked 2-3 times every week for 15 months. We had asked Premier Higgs and our Premier to form a bubble similar to what Northern New Brunswick did with Quebec. There's 2 communities in Northern New Brunswick. They twinned, they called it. We had been asking since last November for our premiers to do that here between Cumberland and Westmoreland, knowing how integrated we are. And on June 11th, Premier Higgs made an announcement that he was going to welcome Cumberland County to be part of New Brunswick's reopening plan. So everyone was elated. It was like keeping in mind, all of the challenges that I've just shared with you. So I called up Premier Rankin on June 11th and said, oh my goodness, we're so happy here. Premier Higgs is allowing Cumberland County into New Brunswick. And Premier Rankin said no. That was on June the 11th. And so the people here were very angry on June 11th. And then on June the 15th, Premier Rankin came out and said, well, we're going to open to the rest of Atlantic Canada on June the 23rd. So then everyone's like, okay. So now June 23rd. Then on June 22nd at 2:00, a press release was sent out saying, oh, I've changed my mind again. We're going to open up to PEI in Newfoundland, but now we've changed our mind with New Brunswick. And they also shared these, I don't know if you saw them, but just bureaucratic red tape, like mishmash of rules of 1 vaccine and 2 vaccine and testing and isolating for 3 days and 7 days. And like, it was just total confusion and total anger. So June 22nd at 2:00, when that was released, I got a flood of messages through all my portals from people basically saying, we're done. We're done. And so I thought long and hard, because there had been a group that had been actually at the Nova Scotia New Brunswick border for the previous 8 weeks every Sunday. And they had shut the border down a few times. It didn't make the media, but there was a group that had been meeting every Sunday for 8 weeks. I hadn't ever gone out and joined them. I knew of them, but I didn't really support blocking the Nova Scotia New Brunswick border, because I've been trying to get it open.
Right.
Right. So, but that group, as well as many others, contacted me as soon as on June 22nd and said, we're shutting things down. We've had it. So I thought long and hard, well, not too long, probably 20, 30 minutes. And I decided that I was going to go and join them. And I know I've been in Halifax when streets have been shut down and the port have been shut down and trucks not been able to go due to different protests, whether it be against forestry or climate change. And so I knew that in the past, other MLAs have gone and stood shoulder to shoulder with their constituents in support of what they were protesting. So I made a decision to do that day and met probably about 200 people at Exit 7, which is in a place called Westchester. It's about 35 minutes from the Nova Scotia New Brunswick border. And I arrived there at about 4:30 on June the 22nd. And I stayed there with our people until probably about 9:30. And there was RCMP on site. They assured me that it was a legal, peaceful protest, that emergency vehicles and actually all vehicles were able to be diverted through other exits. And any vehicles that were in the lineup that had, or at least ones that we were aware of that had children or anybody that had any sort of medical condition, the RCMP asked the protesters if they could get through, and the protesters did allow them through. So I looked at it as, I'm there to support the people. I know what they've been through. And one of my, I guess you'd call him a friend, but also somebody who has a lot of political experience, he came and talked to me. He said, Elizabeth, Premier Rankin. So I did try calling Premier Rankin about 5 or 6 times. He never took the calls. And my friend just said, look, he's clearly not going to do anything. And said, why don't you ask the people to go home? And if in exchange, you will travel to the city early in the morning, requesting a meeting with the Premier to share their concerns. So I took his advice, spoke to the people. The media were all there. They recorded all of it, but they didn't show any of that, right? So I gave a little speech, asked people to disperse, to go home for safety and for their safety, for everyone's safety, and told them on their behalf, I would go and request a meeting with the Premier. And everything was shut down. I went home and got up in the morning, went down and tried to see the Premier, but he did refuse. Unfortunately, I stayed there all day and I met several great people. But so that's what happened on Tuesday. Meanwhile, through the night, the group that had been meeting at the border for the last 8 weeks, they went and set up a blockade. And when I found out about it, the next morning, RCMP and I had been talking back and forth. I did speak with them over the phone and asked them to please open up the highway. That happened 3 times throughout the day on Wednesday, but keep in mind, they were not representing me. They were there on their own accord and were not, they were making their statement. I think they were mad too that Premier Rankin was not willing to listen and not willing to hear their concerns.
Right.
So I'll stop for a minute in case you have any questions to clarify up to that point.
Yeah, absolutely. I think everyone can relate, one with, not feeling heard, and especially when it comes down to things as serious as healthcare and small businesses and everything that you've mentioned. I totally recognize exactly where you're coming from. So I want to know, what were your thoughts when you started to see the border back up? Did you feel like what you wrote to do was working, or did you sort of feel the impending consequences start to rise up? What were those emotions like as you were there?
So do you mean on Tuesday?
Yes, well, you were present at the border.
So I was never at the border.
Or at I guess the exit 7.
Yeah, so I was at exit
7.
It's about 35 minutes away from the border. Yeah. And so, yeah, it never really escalated. It wasn't like what the media showed at the Nova Scotia New Brunswick border, because RCMP were there. It was peaceful. Traffic was able to be diverted if necessary. The people there, honestly, there was a lot of families. There was grandmothers. There were business owners, and they felt empowered. They were like, we need to make a stand. Somebody needs to listen to us, because no one was listening. They've tried. I tried on their behalf, and so I think they felt empowered, as most people do, like when they do a protest, and who wants to go and do something like that? I think people felt desperate. People were angry, frustrated, and I think felt desperate. And like I compared it earlier, it really was kind of like a powder keg that had been building. The pressure had been building and building.
Absolutely. As things started to get, I'll use the word hot, at the actual border, once you had already left, so physically at the border, what was hearing about that? Obviously, it was sort of end of day, so there wasn't a lot going on, downtown or with other officials. What was going through your head when you realized this is turning into something a little more, I'll say, explosive?
Yeah, so I really wasn't aware of all of what was going on, because I was sitting down in front of one government place waiting for the premier to speak with me on behalf of the people. So I didn't see any of that. I had people calling me throughout the day, asking, is the premier seeing you? Dale Palmater came out. He works for the premier, and told me that the premier was refusing to meet with me on behalf of the people, and offered me to speak with the Minister of Health, which I did. And so we spoke about everything. But the answer to your question is, I wasn't really aware, to be honest, of what was happening at the Nova Scotia border. I did get a report from New Brunswick's Premier's office, called me, wanted to know if I knew who the protesters were, and wanted to know if I knew any of their background, because Premier Higgs, got to give him credit, he called and spoke to the people that were leading the protest at the Nova Scotia New Brunswick border, which I was pretty impressed that he did that. He called them, asked them what they wanted, and they told him. And my understanding, what happened next is Premier King from PEI called an Atlantic Premiers Council meeting. The 4 premiers met virtually, of course. And it was after their meeting that the RCMP shut things down.
Got it.
So I think personally, I can see what led to this. Premier Rankin could have shut down that border blockade Wednesday. He could have shut that down at 9 o'clock. He could have met with me, which I think the people would have, that's what the people wanted on their behalf, at least the people that I were with on Tuesday. But he had the ability to contact our CMP and shut that down on Wednesday, and he chose not to. So why did he do that?
Yeah.
It's a good question to ask.
So I guess my next question then would be, that was essentially the criticism that came out a lot was, how could you not know what your constituents were doing? That was the kind of, that was the blowback that came back a lot. And what is your response to that? I know you've answered that at various times in the media, but from your words specifically to us, what is your answer to, shouldn't you know what your constituents are doing when it comes to like a protest of this magnitude?
Yeah. So I knew what was happening through people giving me a call, but I never really had the idea because I physically wasn't there and I wasn't watching any video or anything. So my former leader, Tim Houston, called me probably at around, I'm going to say around 4:00 to say, Elizabeth, there's the media think you're there. They're reporting it as though you're there leading this. And they're recording people that are really against vaccines, and they're painting you to look like you're against vaccines. And that's painting a bad picture on our PC party. So of course, I feel terrible about that. I think in Canada, we do live in a democracy where we have rights, individual rights and freedoms, and it is people's individual right if they want to receive a vaccine or not. But personally, as a registered nurse, I've given vaccines my whole career for 30 years, and I've given COVID-19 vaccines. So I was concerned that that's how the media were portraying it. It was a really good lesson in media, because the media, even though they were with me on Tuesday, Global was there, CBC, CTV, they were all there. Global for sure recorded me shutting down the protest on Tuesday and even interviewed me after to ask me why I did that. They never showed any of that footage. But instead, the footage that they showed on Wednesday afternoon, they correlated it with my video to the premier to say, look, enough is enough. And the people are going to shut down the highway. So you need to do something. It wasn't me. I went there to support them. I wasn't shutting it down. I mean, really, how much power do you think little Elizabeth has from Linden, Nova Scotia? Really, I was projecting the frustration and the anger of the people that I represent here. And why do you elect people if they are not going to truly represent you? And I know there's people that are angry with me around, because let me tell you, I got some pretty awful messages. I know that people are angry, but a lot of those people don't actually know the whole story. And I will tell you, most of the people that live here, they are so proud that finally somebody stood up for them, because they feel oppressed. They have felt completely ignored by this government for the last 15 months. And they have been. I mean, I've tried letters, phone calls, meetings, and they just refuse. They've just refused to listen and hear the concerns, and people just had it. I mean, example, today I went to a funeral in Oxford, and my husband and I went to Tim Hortons to get lunch. And the woman, we walked in and the manager said, "Oh, you're not paying for your lunch." She said, "I'm paying for your lunch because I want to say thank you for what you did." So that's the feeling here in our community. People were fed up, and they were just happy that finally somebody represented them.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think that is a lot of great points. And I think, you explaining how you were in support of what they were doing. You weren't necessarily locking down the border, but you were there in support of, and now recognizing that doing something like this can lead to people feeling heard and people feeling noticed and their businesses being noticed. So I have a question in regards to your public statement of the 2020 railway blockades, and your public, I would say, message that was unacceptable. So I'm curious how now it was acceptable and you were in support of, and you can see how something like that works, but back then it was not okay.
Yeah. So I think a great question to always ask is what led us to this moment?
Right.
And even in that situation, when I tweeted that out, and a lot of people have tried to use that to sort of frame me. There was a lot of frustration when I tweeted that out because, things were being held up. And now fast forward to our present day, I can look at the situation and think, anytime you see a protest where people are so desperate that they're blocking a highway or blocking a pipeline, there's a whole backstory to that. And it's because people have been oppressed, they haven't been listened to. And that's, I think, where the lessons have to come in. And for myself included, to stop and to say, what really led to get people to be at the point where they're so angry and they're so desperate to get someone to listen to them.
Yep.
That they're in that point and I mean, I never would have dreamed something like this would ever have happened. Like, it's unimaginable. And I'm sure look back, in 10 years would be like, did this really happen? Like, did we really have border guards at our border?
Yeah.
Like, unbelievable how even some of them, I guess in every workplace you have people that are really professional, people that aren't, but I had students that literally quit going to school because they were so intimidated and bullied every day going back and forth. I had nurses, like 40% of our hospital staff here at Cumberland Regional live like 10 minutes away, but it's in New Brunswick. I had nurses being bullied. Like, businesses that did business on either side of the border that maybe for 4 months they're allowed to go back and forth every day. And then one day they go and some guy just decides he's going to give them a hard time and refuse them entry. Like, it's hard to explain, but the frustration of the people that are living in this border community and what they've had to put up with the last 15 months, that's why it led to this. And I think that's, anytime you see a situation like that, you have to ask, what happened that got us to this point?
Absolutely. So if you could now, looking back, delete that tweet and make it go away, do you think that's, now that you have that full understanding of why someone would do that, do you think that's sort of where you are now?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think if I was able to turn back, I'd probably ask the question, like, what's happening?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think what was interesting to me, I think I still stand by how I was feeling about it when it all happened. And I was, just so that there's complete transparency on this show. Yes, Elizabeth, you and I, we do have a personal, we know each other personally outside of, this type of setting. So when I saw this was all going down, obviously, I have relationships with your kids, and my parents are friends with you and your husband. I saw it all going down. I had a lot of friends come out to me who did know that I knew you and were obviously very annoyed by what was happening. Yeah. And honestly, for me personally, my response to them, and I still stand by it, because I really do stand behind civil disobedience is necessary in our society to really get governments to recognize when they are just being absolute jabronis. And I fully support it, regardless of what the consequences of it were. I still support it because of what you said tonight was what got people to go here, and why are they trying to get their voices heard? What's happening? And so this is just my personal take on it, is I think the reason why people got so annoyed, so frustrated, was obviously, highway was blocked, and oh man, we lost all this stuff, this, that, the other. But I think the other thing too is, and I think goes back to your point at the beginning of the show, people are not used to their politicians speaking on behalf of them. And so the minute a politician actually did that for her constituents, how dare she? Which I thought was interesting. And
listen, I have no regrets.
Mm-hmm.
I have no regrets. And that's, I feel badly that so many people were inconvenienced. on Wednesday, but I stand by, I did not start Wednesday's border blockade. And my message to the premier on Tuesday was, you better stop what you're doing, because you're messing with the people up here and they've had it.
Yep.
And what you saw was the anger and the frustration of the people. I mean, I don't have that much power to incite that kind of frustration. Really, I don't. I was just projecting what I had been seeing and hearing and feeling from the people here. And it just blew.
Yeah.
It just blew. And I feel strongly that people deserve to have a voice. Like,
Totally.
people deserve to have a voice. And we're going to have an election here in Nova Scotia, probably going to be announced on Saturday. And every one of us that are asking to be elected or reelected, we're going to knock on your door and we're going to say, I want to represent you. I want your support. And we're all going to say, we'll represent you. We'll be your voice. But you know what happens? As soon as you get elected, you, in this day and age, in 2021, you are expected to be a puppet. That is exactly what happened to me after I was elected in 2017. And I was shocked. I was like, what do you mean? The people that are running the show are not the elected people. And that's what needs to change. And we need to get back to grassroots politics, where people that are elected truly represent their people. And maybe someone in Sydney Cape Breton doesn't understand what happens here at the border. But I'm going to tell you something. If this was happening in Sydney Cape Breton, or if this was happening at the Canso Causeway, this would have happened months ago. And I'm just saying that because I know many people, many Cape Bretoners, and they're passionate. They're just as passionate as us, if not more. And I would expect people, other MLAs, to do what is right for the people that represent them, even if other people don't understand.
Right.
Yep.
And this is kind of, I guess this is more of a personal opinion at this point. But like, I am publicly, unless there's someone I have a personal connection to one of the candidates, I actually will not be voting in this election, period. Only because I'm not really in support of what kind of one party is doing in terms of what the Liberals are doing. I appreciate some of the things they've done, don't get me wrong. But the issue I currently have is exactly what you just said. I've caught on throughout COVID that, at least in terms of even the Conservatives, really bother me with, is that they are more concerned about policing those on the other side of the aisle than they are their own constituents. And that really rubs me the wrong way. And they will not be getting my vote, period. So that's kind of where I'm at. Unless someone, as you said, if someone who came knocking on my door saying they want to represent me and they gave me a good reason, then I will vote for them, because I really don't care about the political stripes. I actually more so care about you and what your policies are. So the one thing I do want to add is, I guess, kind of going back in time, I remember watching on one of your Facebook videos about the blockades, and it did seem, at least from my perspective, like I watched it the raw video of it, and it did seem like you were kind of starting the blockades. That's kind of the tone that was taken. Would you understand why someone would feel like you were the one who started all this?
I've gone back and watched it, and I can see from the words that I chose, I can see why people would think that. And that's why, since I've tried to help people to understand. So I was contacted by many people after the Premier's press release came out at 2:00 on the 22nd to say that they were going to shut down the highway. And I urged them to not do it at the border, because I said, we've been trying to open the border. Please don't do it there. And that's why they went to exit 7. Right. And after some consideration, I decided to go and join them. So, my message was pretty strong. I was angry, and it was pointed directly to Premier Rankin, but on behalf of the people that I represent. And, since then, he won't even say my name. He was at a press conference and a reporter asked him, and he called me that person. And I'm going to tell you, a lot of women, at least up here, they are mad at him. They're like you can't even, he was so disrespectful. And my feeling is, I'm just representing the people here. So when you disrespect me, you're disrespecting the people I represent.
Yeah.
Right.
The whole community of people.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. That makes, I mean, I do definitely see where you're coming from, and it makes a lot of sense. And, you know, I think right now, even in politics in general in Canada, any woman who isn't a part of the Liberal Party gets roasted hard. And we see that with Jody Wilson-Raybould as well right now. Obviously, she took a step away from federal politics for that reason specifically. You know, it's not okay what's happening. I think we need to, as a people, need to understand nuance and stop being so tribalistic and really accept each other for our differences, for what they are, but also have decent conversations and not just write people off because they make us a tad bit uncomfortable. But with that, I'll leave it to Dalton. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think I absolutely agree. I think how fast the entire internet, with everyone, politics or social media or sports players, is cancel culture. And it's without even giving a person, it seems like the court of public opinion has become stronger than that of the law. And that absolutely blows my mind. And I just don't know how we've got to this place and how we can veer away from that and give people the right to defend themselves without being called every name in the book or being sent death threats or threats on their family and all these. I just don't get it.
So, and just, you use some interesting words there, Dalton. I'll give you a chance to clarify. What do you mean by, they deserve the right to defend themselves?
I mean, they deserve the right to, I would say, get on a public platform or, not like a gun.
Okay, so I want to clarify.
No, like verbally defend themselves.
Cool. Awesome.
Without being cut off and told that they're, a bigot or that they're a racist, which seems to be thrown around so loosely and gently these days that there's no real meaning to the word. I just don't know how we pivot back to something a little more inclusive.
Mm-hmm. So, last question I want to hit on, at least with this specific topic, is you were demanded for an apology, and you said no. I'm curious personally, how did that actual interaction go when that conversation happened, when you were asked to make an apology?
So initially, I was asked to clarify a few things, like that I was not I actually don't like using the word anti-vaxxer because it kind of sounds disrespectful, because everyone does have the right to choose. But I was asked to clarify a few things, and then to say I feel badly what happened on Wednesday, which I had no problem doing. But when it came right down to it, the expectation was that I was to sign or verbally state that I was responsible for the blockade on Wednesday at the Nova Scotia-New Brunswick border, which I was not, and was not willing to sign something simply to make someone else happy. And really, that's been a reflection of my experience in politics the last 4 years. It's not been, if you truly want to represent your people, you're often in conflict with the leader of a party. And it shouldn't be that way. I just want to make one comment in relation to something you said earlier, Josh, and that is, in this current culture and politics, can people truly represent their people if they're part of a political party? I think yes, under the right leadership. And, should we be looking at different models? Nunavut has all independent MLAs, the only place in Canada.
Wow.
Would that produce better political results? Because we either need to go to a model like that, in my opinion, or we need to somehow cultivate leaders, political leaders, political party leaders that allow MLAs to elected officials to truly represent the people that elected them. Because that's what we're supposed to be doing, right?
Yeah, and I think you make.
But anyway, about the apology, that's basically, it came down to, I wasn't willing to give up my own integrity to sign something that was not true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, it's I think you bring up a good point, because we have kind of that system on a municipal level. which I think is actually very positive. I love my counselor. I think he's done a fantastic job for my area.
They manage to get things done quite frequently.
Yeah. And I do think that's actually one of my favorite parts when it comes around to those elections is that there's no party affiliation. You're able to look at them for their policies, what they're trying to do. And it just takes away a barrier from my perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, those are some great points. So that's all we got for you. But we really appreciate you coming on and voicing kind of your perspective of what's happened. And we know that at times when the media can get involved, they can get carried away with specific narratives. And we wanted to kind of hear your perspective on those various narratives and what may have been truth, may have been myth, and may have been a mix of the both. And we appreciate you coming on and
learning about a person who's so much more than one day.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I appreciate the opportunity. And I think if I could send one last message, it's that each person has a voice and matters. And they should be respected and heard. And maybe there's somebody listening out there that wants to put their name on a ballot. Don't be discouraged. I would rather do what I think is right and be removed from a party, but know that I did what was right for the people than to not. And it's a challenging career. My first 6 months I was threatened. Somebody was going to kill me, and it attracts a lot of conflict and a lot of polarizing opinions and anger and frustration. So, but if you believe in what you're doing and you believe that things can be done better, and you believe that in the greater good, the easiest thing for me to do would have been just walk away.
Right.
Yeah.
But if every person that believes that government should be based on foundations of truth and justice and honesty walks away, what are we left with?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just say, people that are listening, stand up for what you think is right. Fight for what you believe your truth and justice is for you and your family and the people that you love, and think we'll all be better off if we do that, and respect one another through it.
For sure.
Absolutely.
I think those last words
Those are good departing words.
Yeah, those are specifically great departing words. Really appreciate your time, Elizabeth, and it really does mean the world that you took the time out, and we wish you luck as you pursue this endeavor as an independent.
Your new journey.
And good luck.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dude,
that
was good.
That was a great episode. It was almost shocking to hear.
Yeah.
From the person herself. What went down.
Exactly. Especially when it comes to politics, I definitely anticipated it being even a tad bit more antagonistic.
Totally low-key. I was prepared for a fight.
Yeah, I know you were. I saw the notes you made on that.
Yeah, I was like, well, it's a politician.
Yeah, we got to hold our politicians to a high standard.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but everything we had, there was a solid answer to. Yeah, I didn't feel swindled.
No, and we'll leave that to you to kind of make your own decisions and what you've come to on it. We don't want to sway, anything you said. That's the goal of a podcast, and a goal of this type of platform is we want just to present information to you, and you can make your own decision.
Form those opinions.
And form your own opinion of what it is. And if your opinion is Josh and Dalton, you suck, so be it.
Yeah, tell us in the comments.
Yeah.
Let me know.
But just make sure you share it first.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
On your socials.
Yeah, precisely. So whatever you're doing, whether you be sitting at a highway blockade.
Oh, man. Oh, I don't know. That was mine. You've never done this to me before.
Or waiting for some lobster.
Dang. Or some vaccines.
Or waiting for your blood work to come in. Whatever it is.
Wherever you are.
We love you.
We're out.
Peace.